After sewing the two wings parts together with a back stitch, cut close to the stitch about 1 mm away to remove the excess fabric. Spread the two parts open. The neat part will be the back of the wings, and the stitched part would be covered by the pattern cutout, so eventually the result is clean on both sides. Place the pattern cutouts on top of the wings. The top part should completely hide the stitch we made. After all cutouts are in place, pin each part with sewing pins, so it won't move while you sew. I suggest pinning each wing's parts at a time so the sewing process will be easier and will run smoothly. We'll start by sewing the inner edge of each part using a blanket stitch sewing applique. With a beige thread, to match the felt color, start sewing. Insert the needle between the two layers so the knot is hidden between the layers. When sewing the pattern parts with the blanket stitch, try to insert the needle just slightly through the second layer of felt so the stitches won't show on the back side. Don't worry if they do end up showing, this side would be facing your child's back, so it won't really be visible. Keep sewing until you reach the outer edge. Then, remove the needle but leave the thread attached. Once you sew all the pattern's cutouts, you'll resume sewing and filling each part using the thread you left. When sewing the top part, we'll do things a bit different. Once you finish sewing the inner part, we need to consider how we're going to fill it with stuffing. The best way to do it is by starting in the center and sew outwards and filling it with stuffing as we go, then repeating the process in the other side. To get rid of the thread, we'll make a knot to secure our sewing. Insert the needle into the last stitch and pull until a loop is formed. Make sure the stitch is tight by pulling the loop. Run the needle in the loop and pull tight. Insert the needle in between the layers, close to the last stitch, and make another knot. Cut the excess thread. Once you finish sewing the inner edge of all cutouts, start sewing the outer edges. Start with the top part, going from the center outwards and filling it with stuffing as you go. Using a blanket stitch, start sewing the top part. Insert the needle in between the two felt layers so the knot is hidden. Insert the needle from the backside to the exact point where the thread comes out. Pull the thread tight so your first stitch is strong and steady. Sew a few stitches and then take a pause in order to fill it with stuffing. For the last stitch, insert the needle into the stitch you wish to connect to. Pull the thread until a loop is formed and run the needle in the loop. Pull it tight. Insert the needle into the filled part, closer to the stitch you made, and take the needle out somewhere on the cut-out surface. Cut the excess thread. Now, repeat the process on the other side of the wings. Once again, make your first stitch in the center. Make sure the stitch is tight and secure. Sew a few stitches and then take a pause in order to fill it with stuffing. Make sure that the layers are sitting properly on one another in order to get a neat sewing. If necessary, it's okay to cut one felt layer to fit better with the other layer. For the last stitch, insert the needle into the stitch you wish to connect to. Pull the thread. Do it again until a loop is formed and run the needle in the loop. Pull it tight. Insert the needle into the filled part, closer to the stitch you made, and take the needle out somewhere on the cut-out surface. Cut the excess thread. Now I want to show you how to sew another cutout, one that has a small and narrow part. We'll sew the remaining cutouts using the thread you left when sewing the inner edges. Take a really small piece of stuffing and push it in with the wood stick. By taking a small piece will ensure that the small part of the cutout will be nicely filled. Continue filling the cutout with stuffing. Once the narrow part is filled, you can use bigger piece of stuffing to fill the entire cutout. Once you finish filling the cutout, sew both layers together with blanket stitch. Before making the last few stitches, make sure the cutout is evenly filled. Make the last stitch by connecting to the closest stitch. To hide the thread, insert the needle in between the layers. Take the needle out somewhere on the cutout surface and cut the excess thread. In the same way, sew and fill all of the wings cutouts.